The hostess's smile vanished as quickly as it had appeared when she saw the elderly woman in worn clothes approaching the counter. With practiced disdain, she placed her manicured hand over the reservation book. "I'm sorry, we're fully booked tonight." A lie that would change more lives than one. The chandelier lights of Lumiere cast glittering reflections across the marble floors of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant. The space hummed with the gentle clinking of crystal glasses and muted conversations of the city's elite. Women draped in designer gowns and men in tailored suits exchanged knowing glances. This was their world, a fortress of privilege. Through the revolving doors came a woman who didn't belong. In her 60s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a simple bun, she wore a dated floral dress and carried a weathered purse. Her hands, marked with calluses and age spots, fidgeted nervously as she approached the hostess podium. The young hostess, Vanessa, had perfected the art of the dismissive glance. She assessed the woman's worn shoes and subtle accent with surgical precision. "Good evening," Vanessa said, her voice cooling several degrees. "Do you have a reservation?" "I don't," the woman replied softly. "But I was hoping to get a table. It's a special occasion." Vanessa's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched. "I'm afraid that's impossible. We're fully booked for the next 3 months." She gestured to the half-empty restaurant behind her. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable somewhere. Less formal." The woman's eyes dimmed, but she stood her ground. "Please, I've come a long way. I don't mind waiting." A man in an expensive suit approached the podium. "Richard Blackwell," he announced without preamble. "Table for 2. "Of course, Mr. Blackwell." Vanessa's smile returned, dazzling and immediate. "Your table is ready, right this way." As they brushed past, Blackwell muttered, "The homeless shelter is 3 blocks east," loud enough for the woman to hear. Laughter rippled through the nearby tables. The woman's cheeks flushed, but her eyes remained fixed on Vanessa. "Please," she said again, "today is important to me." "Ma'am," Vanessa's voice hardened, "we have standards here. I suggest you try the diner down the street. This restaurant isn't for everyone." A single tear escaped, tracking down the woman's weathered cheek, but there was something in her eyes, not just hurt, but a knowing patience. As if she held a secret the gleaming room couldn't begin to understand. As the woman turned to leave, a young waiter named Marcus stepped forward. His uniform was pristinely pressed, but his eyes lacked the coldness that permeated the restaurant. "Excuse me," he said quietly. "Would you like a glass of water while you wait? It's warm outside." Vanessa shot him a warning glance. "Marcus, you're needed in section 3. The woman smiled at Marcus. "Thank you for your kindness." Marcus hesitated, then stepped back into his professional role. But his eyes followed the woman as she made her way to a bench outside the restaurant's entrance. Through the glass doors, the staff could see her sitting patiently, occasionally checking her watch. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the street. Inside, the executive chef, Blake Thompson, was berating a line cook for a slightly overcooked steak. "This is Lumiere, not some roadside diner. Do it again, and do it right." Blake was a rising star in the culinary world. Young, talented, and ruthless. His restaurant had earned 2 Michelin stars in record time, and his ego had expanded accordingly. He treated his staff like disposable ingredients and his wealthy patrons like gods. As Blake stormed back to his office, Marcus approached Vanessa. "That woman is still waiting outside. It's been almost an hour." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Not my problem. She clearly can't afford to eat here anyway. Probably just wanted to gawk at celebrities. She seems, I don't know, dignified somehow." Marcus persisted. "Maybe we could find her a small table in the corner." "Are you serious? Blake would fire both of us." "You know his policy. Only the right kind of people get through those doors. That's how Lumiere maintains its prestige." Marcus glanced outside again. The woman hadn't moved, her patience unwavering. "I'm going to at least bring her some water." "Your funeral?" Vanessa shrugged. Outside, Marcus approached the woman with a glass of water. "I'm sorry about earlier. Here." She accepted the water gratefully. "Thank you. You're very kind. Can I ask why today is so special? Why this restaurant?" The Woman's eyes softened. Today is my birthday, and this place, it holds memories. Happy birthday, Marcus said awkwardly. I wish I could help you get a table. It's okay, I'll wait a little longer. As Marcus returned inside, he noticed Vanessa and two other hosts huddled together, glancing at the woman and laughing. Their mockery was interrupted by Blake, who emerged from the kitchen like a storm. Why is Section 5 still empty? He demanded. Those tables should be turned by now. We're waiting for the Hansons, Vanessa explained. They're running late. Unacceptable, give their table to someone else. Well, Vanessa smirked, there is that woman outside who's been begging for a table. Should I seat her instead? Blake followed her gaze to the window. For a moment something flickered across his face, something almost like recognition, but it vanished quickly. Don't be ridiculous, he snapped. This isn't a charity. Call the Millers from the wait list. As he turned to leave, Marcus stepped forward. Chef, with all due respect, that woman has been waiting patiently for over an hour. She says it's her birthday. Blake's eyes narrowed. Are you questioning my judgment, Marcus? No, sir, but one more word and you're fired. We don't serve. Just anyone here. That's why people pay $500 a plate. As Blake stalked away, Marcus glanced back at the woman. There was something about her quiet dignity that stood in stark contrast to the restaurant's gilded pretension. In her weathered face, he saw a lifetime of stories untold. In Blake's arrogant swagger, he saw only emptiness disguised as success. The night progressed and Lumiere buzzed with activity. Blake moved from table to table, accepting compliments and admiration with practiced humility that never quite reached his eyes. At table 9, a famous movie producer raised his glass. Blake, you're a genius. This duck is transcendent. Thank you, Henry. I was inspired by my travels in Provence last summer, Blake replied, omitting that he'd actually stolen the recipe from an old cookbook. The evening was perfectly orchestrated theater until the double doors burst open. A food critic from the New York Times, notorious for his brutal honesty, had arrived unannounced. A hush fell over the restaurant as Vanessa rushed to greet him. Mr. Winters, what an unexpected pleasure, she gushed. I prefer it that way, he replied coldly. Surprise visits yield honest reviews. Blake emerged from the kitchen, his face pale. James, wonderful to see you. I'll prepare something special. No, Winters interrupted. I'll have whatever your typical customer orders. I'm reviewing the restaurant, not the chef's ability to recognize critics. As Blake retreated to the kitchen, panic erupted. Everything has to be perfect, he shouted, slapping a plate from a sous chef's hands. Do you want to destroy us? One bad review from Winters and we're finished. In his frenzy, Blake knocked over a pot of sauce, splattering his immaculate white coat. Damn it! He grabbed a line cook's arm, leaving a bruise. This is your fault, standing in my way. The staff froze, shocked by his brutality. The mask had slipped, revealing the tyrant beneath. Outside, the humble woman still waited, now shivering slightly as the evening grew cooler. Marcus, risking his job, brought her a shawl from the lost and found. You should probably go home, he suggested gently. I don't think they're going to seat you. Just a little longer, she insisted. Someone's coming. Inside, disaster struck. Winters took one bite of his appetizer and frowned. This is severely underseasoned. Blake, watching from the kitchen doorway, felt sweat beading on his forehead. When the main course arrived, Winters took a single bite and put down his fork. Is something wrong, sir? The server asked. This fish is overcooked. Dramatically so, Blake stormed back into the kitchen. Who prepared this fish? Who? A young chef stepped forward, trembling. I did, chef. Blake grabbed the nearest pan and hurled it across the kitchen, narrowly missing the young man's head. You're fired! Get out of my kitchen! The kitchen fell silent. In that moment of rage, Blake caught his reflection in a stainless steel surface, contorted, ugly, unrecognizable. Was this who he had become? Outside, Marcus watched as the woman finally stood up. I'm sorry, he said. This isn't right. It's okay, she replied with unexpected calmness. I didn't come for the food. Inside, Winters was preparing to leave. Mr. Thompson, he called. A word before I go? Blake approached, his career flashing before his eyes. "I've been to many restaurants," Winters began, "but rarely have I witnessed such inauthenticity. The food is technically perfect but soulless, and the atmosphere," he gestured around, "exclusionary, to the point of cruelty. I watched how your staff treated an elderly woman earlier. That told me everything I needed to know about Lumiere." Blake stood speechless as Winters left. Through the windows he could see the woman still outside, now standing as if finally ready to leave. Something broke inside Blake. The perfect facade of his life cracked, revealing the hollow core beneath. 2 Michelin stars, celebrity clients, magazine covers, and not a single genuine connection. He had built a temple to exclusivity and trapped himself inside. He stumbled to his office and collapsed into his chair. On his desk sat a framed review from when Lumiere first opened. Thompson's cooking reveals a rare authenticity and soul. When had he lost that? When had succeeding become more important than creating something meaningful? A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Marcus stood at the door. "Chef, that woman is leaving. I think you should talk to her." "Why would I do that?" Blake asked, but his voice lacked conviction. "Because she's been waiting for hours, on her birthday, and she keeps looking at this restaurant like it means something to her." Blake stood at the window, watching the humble woman slowly, gathering her things. Something tugged at his memory, a familiarity he couldn't place. "What's her name?" he asked suddenly. Marcus shook his head. "I don't know. Vanessa wouldn't even take it for the wait list." Blake's phone buzzed. A notification. Trending food critic James Winters storms out of Lumiere. Social media was already ablaze with speculation. His carefully constructed reputation was unraveling in real time. But strangely, Blake found himself unmoved by the impending professional disaster. Instead, his eyes remained fixed on the woman outside. As she turned to leave, the streetlight illuminated her profile, and recognition hit him like a physical blow. "Oh my God," he whispered. Without explanation, Blake rushed through the restaurant. Ignoring the curious stares of patrons and staff, he burst through the front doors just as the woman was stepping away from the bench. "Mom?" His voice cracked on the word. The woman turned, her eyes gentle and knowing. "Hello, Bobby." Blake, born Robert Blake Thompson but known professionally as simply Blake, stood frozen, the cool night air suddenly insufficient for his lungs. "What are you doing here?" he managed. "It's my birthday," she answered simply. "I wanted to see you, to see what you've built." The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. His mother had traveled from their small hometown in Ohio to see him, to see his restaurant, and his staff had turned her away while he hid in the kitchen. "Why didn't you tell them who you were? Why didn't you call me?" Eleanor Thompson's smile held decades of understanding. "Would it have mattered? I wanted to see how you treat people when you don't know they're watching, how your restaurant welcomes strangers." The weight of her words crushed him. He had failed the most important review of all his mothers. "You should come inside," he said weakly. Eleanor shook her head. "No, Bobby, I've seen enough." As she turned to leave, Blake felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Genuine fear. Not fear of a bad review or lost business, but fear of losing something irreplaceable. "Mom, please." He reached for her arm. "Please." The desperation in his voice made her pause. "Just coffee," he said. "Not in the restaurant. There's a diner around the corner, please." At the small, brightly lit diner, Blake and Eleanor sat across from each other in a vinyl booth. The contrast with Lumiere couldn't have been more pronounced. Plastic menus, chipped mugs, servers in practical uniforms who called everyone Hon. Blake couldn't remember the last time he'd been in such a place. As a culinary student, he'd frequented diners, appreciating their honest approach to food. When had he become so removed from that authenticity? "Do you remember Marlene's diner back home?" Eleanor asked, cradling her coffee. Blake nodded. "You used to take me there on my birthday. They'd put a candle in a stack of pancakes. You always said you wanted to open a place where everyone felt welcome, like at Marlene's." The simple truth of her words stung. His chest tightened with shame. What happened to that boy, Bobby? The one who loved cooking because it brought people together? Blake stared into his untouched coffee. I don't know, he admitted. Somewhere along the way, I started caring more about what critics thought than about the food or the people eating it. Eleanor reached across the table and took his hand. Her touch, warm, calloused from decades of hard work, transported him back to their small kitchen in Ohio. She had raised him alone after his father left, working double shifts as a waitress. She had saved for years to send him to culinary school. You know, she said, I followed your career from afar. All those magazine covers, TV appearances. I've kept every article about you. She paused. But tonight was the first time I ever felt I didn't know you. A waitress approached their table. You folks ready to order? Just the coffee for now, thank you, Eleanor replied. The waitress, her name tag read Doris, noticed Eleanor's tired eyes. Long day, honey? Yes, it has. Ben, tell you what, pie's on the house tonight. We just baked 'em fresh. She smiled warmly before moving to the next table. Blake watched this simple interaction with new eyes. The kindness, freely given. The genuine connection between strangers. When had his own restaurant last offered such humanity? Mom, he said, suddenly. I'm so sorry for tonight, for everything. Eleanor squeezed his hand. It's not me you need to apologize to, Bobby. As they talked into the night, Blake felt layers of pretension and pride peeling away. His mother shared stories of home, of neighbors and old friends. She spoke of her pride in his talent, but also her worry at the person he'd become. Success is hollow if you lose yourself to achieve it, she said. When they finally left the diner, Blake impulsively hugged Doris and left a $100 tip. Outside, the night air felt cleansing, full of possibility. What now? Eleanor asked. Blake looked back toward Lumiere, its pretentious facade now seeming like a monument to his misplaced values. Now, he said with newfound clarity, I start fixing what I broke, starting with my kitchen. And then, maybe I build something new, something honest. Eleanor smiled, not with pity or judgment, but with hope. That sounds like my son talking. Next morning, Blake arrived at Lumiere earlier than usual. The restaurant was empty except for the cleaning staff, people he realized he had never properly acknowledged. Good morning, he said to an elderly man mopping the floor. The man looked up, startled. Good morning, chef. I'm sorry, but I don't know your name. Eduardo, sir. I've been cleaning here for 3 years. The shame deepened. 3 years, and he'd never bothered to learn the man's name. As the staff trickled in, Blake called an emergency meeting. They gathered nervously, expecting rage over the previous night's disaster. Vanessa arrived last, her confidence slightly dimmed by Winter's exit. I suppose you've all seen the social media buzz, Blake began. The staff exchanged uneasy glances. But that's not why I called you here. Last night, something more important happened. The woman who came in, the one who was refused service. He paused, his voice catching. That was my mother. Gasps rippled through the group. Vanessa paled. She raised me alone, worked as a waitress for 30 years to put me through culinary school. And last night, on her birthday, she came to see what her son had built. Instead, she saw exactly what Lumiere has become, cold, exclusive, and soulless. He looked directly at Vanessa. She was told this restaurant wasn't for everyone. Vanessa stared at the floor, mortified. But here's the thing, Blake continued. She was right to leave, because this isn't the restaurant I wanted to create, and that's on me, not on any of you. I've fostered this culture. I've rewarded coldness and called it excellence. He looked around at his staff, seeing them truly for the first time. Young people who had come to work for him because they loved food, not to be berated and belittled. Starting today, Lumiere is changing. We're going back to what matters, creating food that tells a story, that welcomes people in rather than keeps them out. Anyone who can't embrace that vision is free to leave, with a recommendation and severance. No hard feelings. Silence filled the room. Then Marcus stepped forward. Chef, we'd like to be part of that change. Murmurs of agreement spread through the staff. Even Vanessa, though still avoiding eye contact, remained in her seat. "Good," Blake nodded, "because our first order of business is reopening tonight with a special guest of honor. My mother is coming back, and this time she's getting the welcome she deserves." The transformation began immediately. Blake worked alongside his staff, not above them. He listened to their ideas, acknowledged their expertise. When a young line cook suggested modifying a sauce, Blake tried it and found it was better than his original. By evening, the restaurant hummed with a different energy. Tables were rearranged to feel more welcoming. The lighting was softened. The staff moved with purpose rather than fear. At 7 o'clock, Eleanor arrived, hesitant at the entrance. This time, it was Blake himself who greeted her. "Mom," he said, taking her hands, "welcome to Lumiere." Behind him stood his entire staff, including Vanessa, who stepped forward with visible remorse. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, her voice small, "I am deeply sorry for how I treated you yesterday. There's no excuse for my behavior." Eleanor studied her for a moment, then offered a gentle smile. "Thank you for your apology. We all have moments we wish we could redo." Blake led his mother to the best table in the house. As she sat down, she noticed something. The other patrons were a mix of elegantly dressed diners and ordinary people. At one table, a family with young children. At another, an elderly couple celebrating an anniversary. "What's all this?" she asked, surprised. "A new chapter," Blake explained. "I called everyone with reservations and told them about our new policy. For every table of regulars, we're reserving a table for someone who wouldn't normally get to dine here. And we're launching a pay-what-you-can night once a week." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "Bobby." "It's just the beginning," he promised. "Wait until you taste the food." Throughout the evening, Blake personally prepared and served his mother's meal, dishes inspired by their shared history, elevated versions of what she had cooked for him as a child, what they had eaten together at Marlene's diner. With each course, stories flowed. The staff gathered to listen as Eleanor shared tales of young Bobby's first culinary disasters, his determination to master the perfect omelette at age 10. By dessert, a reimagined version of Marlene's birthday pancakes, complete with a candle. The entire restaurant had been drawn into their circle. Strangers exchanged smiles, shared bites of food across tables. The invisible barriers that had defined Lumiere began to dissolve. 6 months later, Blake stood in the kitchen of the transformed Lumiere, watching his team work with confident joy. The restaurant had changed dramatically, less expensive, more welcoming, but still dedicated to culinary excellence. Gone were the days of terror and tantrums. In their place, a collaborative spirit had emerged. Vanessa, who had chosen to stay and embrace the new vision, now greeted every guest with genuine warmth, regardless of their appearance or status. The door to the kitchen swung open, and Eleanor entered, wearing a simple chef's coat with culinary advisor embroidered on the pocket. After that fateful night, she had accepted Blake's invitation to move to New York and bring her wisdom to Lumiere. Her decades of experience in diners had provided invaluable perspective on creating true hospitality. "The journalist is here," she informed Blake. He nodded, taking a deep breath. Today, Food and Wine was profiling Lumiere's transformation. The article would feature the restaurant's innovative sliding scale pricing and its apprenticeship program for underprivileged youth interested in culinary careers. In the dining room, James Winters, the very critic whose walkout had catalyzed Blake's change of heart, sat at a corner table. When he spotted Blake, he stood and extended his hand. "Thompson, quite a different place you've got here." Blake shook his hand. "Different chef behind it too, I hope." They sat together as Blake explained the journey of the past months, the painful self-reflection, the commitment to change, the unexpected rewards of building a truly inclusive restaurant. "You know," Winters mused, "I've been reviewing restaurants for 20 years. I've seen plenty of chefs chase trends or pivot after bad press. But this," he gestured around at the diverse, happy crowd, "this is something else entirely. This is authentic transformation." Blake smiled. "I had a good teacher." He glanced at his mother, who was showing a young apprentice how to properly season a dish. As the interview concluded, Winters asked one final question. After all this change, all this success, what would you say is the most important ingredient? Say in a great restaurant. Blake considered for a moment. Humanity, he answered finally. The willingness to see every person who walks through that door as someone with a story, someone worthy of care. Technical skill matters, but without heart, it's just expensive calories on a plate. Later that evening, as the last customers were leaving, a young family approached Blake. The father, dressed in worn but clean clothes, extended his hand. Chef Thompson, I just wanted to say thank you. We saved for months to eat here for our anniversary. At the old Lumiere we would have felt out of place, but tonight we felt like we belonged. Blake looked into the man's eyes and saw reflected there the same dignity he had failed to recognize in his own mother that fateful night. You do belong, Blake said firmly. We all do. After closing, the staff gathered for their nightly family meal, a tradition Blake had instituted where everyone, from dishwashers to sous chefs, ate together and shared stories. Blake raised his glass. To remembering that the true measure of success isn't who we keep out, but who we welcome in. Eleanor smiled proudly across the table. The true richness in life is how you treat those who can offer you nothing in return. What about you? Have you ever judged someone based on appearances, only to regret it later? Or been judged yourself? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories that remind us of our shared humanity.